All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here will be doing our 2022 preview and prediction for the Syracuse O-line. Look at this coaching staff. Dino Babers, he's back for his 7th season. 29-48 record overall. Pretty poor record, but I think Babers has done a pretty good job here at Syracuse. Robert and I, 6th year as the offensive play caller. Tony White, his 2nd year, had a previous stint at Arizona State. Looking at the offense, Nick, they couldn't throw last year one bit. Taj Harris, he was obviously great for them earlier in the season. He, didn't pull. Attack suffered, but I don't think it was just because of Harris. I just think because Garrett Schrader was not a great passer. He did a lot for them on the ground, but showcasing insane toughness. That was used in the running game a lot. Again, he didn't provide much through the air, only 120 yards per game, but had 781 and 14 scores on the ground, 4.5 yards per carry. What do you make of Garrett Schrader, who's once again showcased tremendous toughness, not here at Syracuse, but also at Mississippi State?
Right, Schrader's more of your running quarterback kind of player. Only 52% completion percentage through the air. Definitely more focused on the ground aspect of his game at times. Really not a polished passer. 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Definitely not what you want to see if you're a Syracuse fan. But on the ground, he can carry the load a lot. I love what he can do with the running aspect. 14 touchdowns on the ground, 781 yards for him. Solid running quarterback, but I just don't think that's who you really want to build your offense around if you're Syracuse. The passing game just didn't really exist last year. Taj Harris was a talented wide receiver who just didn't really play for them. He ends up transferring out to Rutgers, a huge pickup for them. But with Sean Tucker and the running back, they definitely can run the ball at Syracuse, but the passing game is really struggling. And if you can't pass the ball and you really are sort of a one-dimensional offense, it's going to hurt you a whole lot.
Like you said, the passing attack wasn't great, but the running game was a sure thing for them. Sean Tucker was elite last year. 1,700 total yards, almost 1,500 of that came on the ground alone. 14 total touchdowns for him as well. I like what they got. Nice 1-2 punch there. They also added Juwan Price from New Mexico State, 5'10", 195. Same height, a little bit smaller, about 15 pounds lighter than that of Tucker, but he's also a small, compact runner. Should provide an impact here, Nick. 693 yards, 5 points. Last year, he was one of the only bright spots for a New Mexico State team that, was not really good one bit. What do you make of this running game? Do you think they'll continue to build on last year's mark? Contest?
I love Sean Tucker. I love his personality. I think the kid is a heart of gold. I love what he can do on and off the field. I think he's a really great personality to have in the locker room. I like his tweets post-game. I think they're pretty funny. And I think Juwan Price is a solid pickup in the portal. Like you said, 10 touchdowns last year on the abysmal New Mexico State team. Similar in size, so they don't really have dueling personalities there. They kind of similar backs, but I think that the two of them together can kind of build off each other. Tucker, I expect a huge season of him again this year. I love what he did last year, 1,700 total yards on the ground. I expect him to get at least 1,700 again this year, potentially maybe even close to 2,000 total yards. I think Tucker's a great back. With another year of experience under his belt, I think he's only going to get better. And I certainly wouldn't be shocked if he ends up transferring at the end of the season to a bigger program.
That's one of the unfortunate things of the transfer portal, but it also gives guys opportunities. That's one of the pros and cons. We'll have that discussion another day. But look at this offensive line. It was a struggle unit last year. Pass protection was poor. Blocking on the ground wasn't great either, but they got some size here, especially on the interior. Right guard, Chris Blake, 6'6", 335. Derek Davis at left guard, 6'5", 336. These guys are massive. This interior O-line allows them to thrive on the ground, and I think that's one reason why having these guys back, adding Price, I think the running game is going to continue to take strides. I think 250 per game is certainly a realistic goal. I do think that the skill really allowed the run game to thrive more so than the offensive line last year, but I think this year you're going to see a nice blend of both, Nick.
I like this offensive line. I think they're going to slowly improve over time. The running game is definitely the bread and butter for Syracuse in upstate New York. I really like what they can do on the ground. I think as long as this offensive line can stay together, create those blocks, find those holes for the backs, 250 yards per game is definitely achievable for this running game, considering the passing game will probably not be used as much this year yet again.
Heading in the last year, one of the biggest concerns with this team that I had was how much youth there was on both sides of the ball, especially here at receiver. They get the top 5 pass catchers from a year ago back because in terms of production. Courtney Jackson, he was a freshman. Technically his 3rd year, but he finally hit the field, made an impact. Damian Alter, he was the 3rd leading pass catcher, 6'6", 215, average 19 yards per catch. Anthony Quealy, speed, that's what he possesses. Overall, I think this is a very young but intriguing group of pass catchers for Garrett Schrader to work with. You think they can capitalize off that?
I definitely like Courtney Jackson. I think he has a lot of talent that he possesses. 389 yards, about 10.5 yards per catch, and 3 touchdowns last year. I just don't see Syracuse throwing the ball a whole lot this year. I think if they do, Courtney Jackson will get some targets. I like the dynamicness he brings to the offense. I think Alfred's also a solid wide receiver, about 19.2 yards per catch in his limited catches last year, 2 touchdowns for him. Solid wide receiver, can definitely be a big play threat if necessary. But in general, I just think, again, it keeps going back to it. This Syracuse team is a ground and pound type of team. That's what they're going to focus on this year.
Yeah, last year their top 4 pass catchers were all sophomores or freshmen in terms of eligibility. So a lot of youth still. Devon Cooper, Sherrod Johnson, 2 veterans that are back. So I think this receiving corps is pretty deep. Should be no excuses this year. I really like this offense to progress nicely this year. I like the running game. The potential's there for the passing game. Again, they got some big size on the O-line. Moving to this defense, you talk about a youthful unit. This one last year, it was tremendously filled with young players. They got much better on defense. Regardless, though, 330 yards per game. They also had the 12th fewest plays on defense in college football, but they were only 89th in time of possession, meaning their offense did not hog the ball. They just got off the field a good bit. 6th in the conference in third downs. They get mostly everybody back. They replace 4 players on the D-line. That's it. That's a big concern, though. Terry Lockett, Steve Linton, there's 2 guys that were pretty young themselves. They're going to slide in their roles here on the defensive line. Size really isn't evident on this D-line, Nick. Kevin Darden, he's a backup nose tackle. He's 5'11", 268. That's not something I'm looking forward to. This D-line last year had some very talented ball players. Those guys are the only really departing players here on this defense. How concerned are you with Syracuse up front?
This D-line definitely worries me. Syracuse lost some talent on this D-line. Some of the guys, including a guy who was drafted in the CFL. Across the board, though, the guys stepping up here, the size just really isn't there. I like Terry Lockett, though, 12 total tackles last year in limited game appearances, 2 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. But in general, the size is giving me some worry. I don't really know if these guys are strong enough. A lot of these guys have really lack experience. A bunch of sophomores on this interior defensive line, and they're going to have to learn very quickly if this defensive line is going to look to get to the quarterback and make some pressure.
Now, linebacker is a very exciting part of this defense. Michael Jones was one of the few I circled last year outside of the guys up front on the D-line, and Jones was phenomenal. He had 4 picks in 2020, none last year, but he showcased playmaking abilities in other facets of his game. 110 tackles, 13 tackles for loss. They also have 2 more freshmen. Stephon Thompson, 79 tackles last year. Marlo Wax, he had 60 stops himself. That was 2nd and 3rd on the team respectively, and of course Jones led the team. He's now a rising junior. Those guys are 2 rising sophomores. Thompson and Max both had 8+ tackles for loss. Like I said, the unit had tons of youth, especially at linebacker. These guys were instrumental in the success versus the run. This was a really good run defense last year. Obviously, I think they're going to take some steps back, though. They were 26th against the run last year. Only allowed 200+ twice. They stonewalled Florida State, Wake Forest. This defense was very good in the front 7, Nick. I don't think people really appreciate how good they were up front. Of course, the D-line's a big concern, but at linebacker, they're pretty stout.
I love this linebacking core. It's so talented across the board. These 3 guys leading the team in tackles, 1, 2, and 3 respectively. Jones, such a talented guy. I love what he can do. 109 total tackles is a super impressive number. And then Thompson and Wax, both these guys are going to get better as they get experience. These guys are super young. They're coming back. They're getting some great experience. They're going to step up here. Both sophomores, they really have a lot of potential. I love what they can do. 79 total tackles for Thompson, 60 for Wax. These guys will only get better as time progresses. I love this linebacking core. I think it's very underrated.
Looking at the secondary, that was not all that bad last year. They allowed 204 yards per game. The numbers were a bit skewed because they were getting off the field a lot. And, downfield coverage wasn't as consistent. But underneath, I thought they were really sound. Get back cornerback Garrett Williams. He's another rising sophomore. He has 2 years under his belt, though. 10 pass breakups in each of his first 2 years. Has been a quality tackler as well, 116 career stops. You look at transfers, Braden Oliver and Elijah Clark. They're going to slot in the safety. The other 2 starters in this back end, it's a 3-3-5, so you got 5 total starters in the back end. The other 2 guys are sophomores. So again, it's a lot of youth, Nick. Darian Chestnut, he had 3 picks last year. Playmaking was not all that great in terms of forcing turnovers because as a team they only had 4 picks. That was 122nd in college football. Chestnut had 3 of those. He had 8 pass breakups as well. Guess what? Another freshman. So these guys are loaded with young talent, and I'm very excited for this team because of all these young guys, and I think they played very well on defense last year, and they're getting 8 starters back.
I love the youth this team has. Shahad Carter, another guy. We're looking at young players stepping up here. 35 total tackles last year for him and a pass breakup. Expect him to have a good season. I love Chestnut's. I love his versatility. I love his athleticism. 3 interceptions last year. Had 3/4 of his team's picks last year. 8 pass breakups as well. Solid player across the board. 43 total tackles. 3.5 tackles for loss. Williams as well. Very solid. I like what he can do. Solid cornerback. I like him to step up more this year. 52 total tackles. 5 tackles for loss. And plus, like you said, the 10 pass breakups across in 2 seasons. Very consistent cornerback. I love what he can do. I think he's a guy to watch out for this.
Looking at the schedule preview and prediction, 5 of the first 6 come at home. It's kind of a tough slate, though, Nick. They host Purdue. That's a tough non-conference game. They also get Louisville and Virginia, and you got UConn sandwiched in there. Wagner's a free win. I think Virginia, they're going to beat that defense down with ease, so I have them winning there. But 3 wins is it for me. I think that this team will get better in every single area other than the run defense. I think they will certainly take a step back because of the 4 defensive linemen they lose. Other than that, I think they progress everywhere else pretty nicely. With that said, though, 3-9. I hate to pick it. Just look at the schedule. I don't really have the guts to pick them to win any other game on here. It's kind of like Rutgers, who we did a few days ago. This team will win more than 3 games when it's said and done. But which ones will we be picking them to win? It's tough. I think 5 to 7 wins is certainly possible for this team. They were tough last year. They had a 4-game stretch last year where they beat Liberty by 3. They lost to Florida State, Wake Forest, and Clemson all by 3 points. And then they turned around and beat Virginia Tech. This team is very competitive. Late in the year, they obviously didn't showcase that same spark. But this is a team that fought hard last year against some really tough competition. Wake and Clemson were 2 of the best in the conference, and they only lost by a combined 6. So I'm going to go 3-9, but I think a bowl game is certainly feasible. But pick them to beat because this is a tough schedule.
Right, Syracuse is just like Rutgers in that the 3 wins are not representative of the type of progress this program will make on the field this year. Wins and losses are not a good way to judge a program like this. I like this roster top to bottom. I think there's a lot of improvement. I think the running game is great. I think the linebacking core is fantastic. It's just when you look at this schedule, there's not a lot of free wins on here. It's going to be tough to pick up games. They could potentially beat Louisville opening weekend at home. That could be a game they maybe steal. Maybe they get Florida State at home in the Carrier Dome as well. Tough place to play if that crowd is rocking. Maybe Florida State gets caught off guard. But looking at the schedule outside of that, it's going to be tough to find any more wins than 3 here. I definitely agree with you that it's, I don't think I can predict them to get more than 3, but, 6 is definitely possible if they get lucky in a couple games and maybe they sneak in bowl eligibility and play one of those lower tier bowl games.
Like you said, wins and losses are not vindictive of how good this program actually is. 29-48 record once again. That's Dino Babers in 6 seasons. But this team, they play hard. They got some good talent. Should be a fun bunch. I don't know about you, Nick, but I do hope that this team can win 5 or 6 games. But we'll see what happens. As always, I appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, absolutely excited for the Syracuse team. I think they're making a lot of progress in all fronts on the offensive defense, and I think Sean Tucker's a fun player to watch, and everyone should root for him.
That's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.